to the first of the Oshow Municipal Election panels. We have put together the best analysts on municipal affairs here in Hamilton to tell you what they think about this very, very important election from today all the way through until the big vote on October 24th. And we're even going to have them here the day after to tell us what they thought. Margaret, Shkimba, so great to have you on the program. You, of course, are a columnist in the Hamilton Spectator, and I think in the last year your columns have been on fire. Welcome to the panel.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. And Dr. Ameil Joseph from McMaster University. It's so wonderful to have you on here with your expertise and your critical eye on this city and its politics. Welcome to the panel.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And Graham Crawford, you, of course, have co-founded I Elect, arguably a movement to engage and get out the vote unseen in the past here in Hamilton, and is part of the conversation, I think. So it's so great to have you on the program, sir.
Thanks, Laura, very much.
And Councillor Robert Pasuta, we couldn't do a municipal election panel without somebody who has sat around that horseshoe. Robert, welcome to the election panel. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be on the panel and share my thoughts.
So let me go to you, Margaret. First question. We just came out of a provincial election, historically low voter turnout, some important impacts on Hamilton and the municipal election. What is your takeaway from the provincial election?
I can't believe that the voter turnout was so low, so incredibly bad. I guess there's a whole analysis that needs to happen around that. But of course, the question that comes out of it is, what happens now with Andrea and the NDP party, and is that going to be an effect on Hamilton politics, which is the big question coming out. The results of the election, very disappointing, very disappointing. In some respects, I'm happy to see that Jason Farr wasn't elected in Stony Creek, East Hamilton, or Hamilton, East Stony Creek, only because of the redemptive, rehabilitative factor that would have done for somebody who really had not done well in terms of Sewergate. Like Sewergate still has to be accounted for. So I think that's, I don't know if we want to talk more about Andrea's prospects.
You've been holding back, Margaret, which I've appreciated.
Because it's been, she's, okay, so first of all, I have two hats, the Hamilton citizen hat and then the ward or the Hamilton Central, which is my MP, and she's my MPP. So I don't want to see her step down as an MPP. I don't want to lose that voice in Queen's Park. Not now, not when I think it's so vital for that voice, for those voices to be there. If she steps down and decides to run for mayor, then we're looking at a by-election in this ward, or in this, are they wards? My mind isn't working right. In this
riding.
In this riding, then we have to have a by-election in the riding. So that then enters into some uncertainty. In addition to the uncertainty of then what happens to the Hamilton political scene with Keenan and then Andrea, and then who else knows? Fred hasn't even stepped up yet, so we don't know if he's going to run again. And then we've got possibility of Bob Bertina, that he hasn't actually filed any paperwork, or he's not official yet. Right. So it could be between these two at this point. I mean, if we're talking about right now at this point, between those two, it's a tough call. And I'd have to go, and I'd have to add to that I don't believe that the relationship between Doug Ford and Andrea Horwath is a good one. I don't know. I think there's double factors there, whether it's the conservative NDP dichotomy that gets in the way, in addition to the fact that I don't think he actually likes her. And I get that from the way he talks to her, the way his voice changes when he speaks to her and at her. Right. And I don't know how useful then that would be for Hamilton at this point in time, and whether or not that's more amicable to business interests, might be more able to work with Doug Ford.
Okay, Ameil, Dr. Joseph, what was your take?
Well, that's pretty much the show, I think.
Thanks, Margaret. I know you all have something to add. she set the table for us, but trust me, right. I've got dive down questions on all of it for you if I need to. Dr. Ameil, what was your takeaway from the provincial election? What did you get when you watched everything coming in?
I personally felt a bit sad, a bit disappointed. And I felt like maybe that was people's sentiments going into the election and coming out of it. We have some very real issues that need to be grappled with in this province. At the provincial level, of course, our education system needs to address its own lack of support, lack of resources, ways to support students, in terms of mental health and in terms of catching up through the pandemic. We haven't really made clear what was discernible across the parties for what would be radically different if you were to vote for somebody other than Doug Ford. I felt like the same was true in healthcare. I felt like the same was true with respect to what was supposed to happen in response to the atrocities in long-term care. You have a premier who doesn't show up in the legislature, who goes on vacation during crisis in Ottawa, who, doesn't show up a lot of the time and has secret fundraisers, doesn't allow press to attend them. We don't know what he says at these things. So it really can leave the public in a position where they feel like they have no say, they have no impact, and there is no trust. So all of it made me feel really disappointed because there's a lot to do and a lot that could be done. There's so much potential.
We had Khmer Saad on the program recently on the Oshow talking about her arrest at a Ford fundraiser, right? And people were outraged across the country that there were those kind of tactics being used, because it certainly sends a chill. But doesn't also the just the apathy, the feeling of we can't do anything to change it anyway, we're kind of stuck, so why bother voting? Ameil, don't you see that's a possibility for the October 24th election, that people will say, the old guard are impossible to unseat, so we might as well just not bother, just sit it out again?
I do. I think there will be, a radical shift in people standing up and showing up to vote in the municipal election, because they know that all of these things matter a lot. And at the municipal level, we're thinking about our environment. We're thinking about housing, affordable housing, permanent housing, how the city is involved in addressing some of these outstanding issues. We're thinking about what the city does in response to hate, which has been, insultingly low level of resourcing of responses to hate and racism in the city. We have issues with policing. We have issues with the need for more accessible, more environmentally friendly public transportation. There are very real, urgent issues that people care about in Hamilton. We know they do, and I think they've seen the kind of costs of letting things slide or waiting to see what's going to happen.
Okay, let me go to you, Councillor Pasuta, because I don't associate you with the old guard, and so much that you're back farming now. You're not kind of clinging to the job forever, but you do know what municipal politics are all about, how to get elected, how it works with the provincial election, with the municipal dynamic. So when you were watching not only, what was going on between Andrea and Del Duca and Ford, but also what happened in Stony Creek with Jason and Neil Lumsden. What did you take away from the provincial election in terms of how it might be affecting Hamilton?
Well, I was surprised that Lumsden got voted in. He wouldn't even participate in any debates, which I think most of all of Ontario's Conservatives were told not to get involved in debates. And I thought maybe Jason might come on a little bit stronger than what he had as far as voting, but he didn't. Andrea and both Del Duca both resigned from their position as leaders, which surprised me too. I thought Andrea would hang on to it, but maybe, and I've listened to Margaret, maybe she is going to take a run at the mayor. She has lots of municipal experience, provincial. She knows the ropes to get around. She knows the federal people. During the debates, there was more rancor or hostility in the campaign with Del Duca than there was with Ford. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not sure she's burnt bridges with Premier Ford. I think it may be easier for her to ask for favors or for support for Hamilton and Hamiltonians and what the needs are. That's my opinion of being there. I think, you know, she has the background to be a mayor. And of course, I think it's time to have a woman in the mayor's position. I know we've got more and more councillors and they have their own opinions. The female leadership around council is a good thing. Around the world you look, you've got mayors, you've got leaders of countries that are women, especially now you watch in Ukraine and with Russia, what's going on in the other countries around there. A lot of the leaders are truly good leading women. So I think there's potential for Andrea with her experience to take the post as mayor if she desires to go forward.
Like others on the panel, I was disappointed, particularly with voter turnout. I was surprised it was as low as it was, as most of us know. More people turn out federally than do provincially, and more turn out provincially than do municipally. So could actually get worse, lower, although it's hard to believe it could be much lower than the provincial one. That was very disappointing. On the other hand, what are some of the causes of that? I think we had two lackluster opposition leaders. You know, we had a buffoon premier, and he's been a buffoon. He was a buffoon before he became premier the first time, but he got reelected quite handily, unfortunately, with a majority. Lackluster campaigns, lackluster leaders, platforms I couldn't really tell you about. And there were no big, bold ideas. So that may be a factor in this. In terms of Andrea running for mayor, I really wish she wouldn't. She's my member of provincial parliament. I've voted for her every time she's run. She ran for the job and she won. She got the job that I voted for her for. I can't vote for her as leader. I voted for her as my MPP and she won. So running for mayor should, Laura, if I can borrow one of your phrases, should not be a consolation prize. She was elected. She should serve her term. Quite frankly, the party needs her now too. She stepped down, there is no leader, and there is going to be a transition that needs to take place. And I think her steady hand, as much as I didn't like this campaign, I do think she does have a steady hand. I think she owes it to her constituents to stay in the job. I think she owes it to her party to stay involved directly. You shouldn't step away when you win.
Right.
It's okay to step away when you lose. But the point is, if Andrea had won and gained NTP seats, she wouldn't have stepped down. So this is too selfish from my perspective. I would love to see her run next time for mayor.
So let me ask you, Graham, and I will just kind of transition to the next part of our discussion here. Andrea may or may not jump into the mayor's race, and what that would mean for Keenan and for Bob. Bob hasn't filed his papers yet, and Fred's going to let us know soon, apparently. But you mentioned something key to me, which is, you know, that whole idea of it shouldn't be a consolation prize. So we saw Jason Farr jump out of his elected council role, albeit elected a few years back, not very recently, tried to, some would say, fail up, tried to move up, failed at that. Should he be able to come back and run in his ward again as kind of a consolation prize for not being able to get the big gig at Queen's Park? And I've heard a rumor, I don't know about any of the rest of you, you know, maybe his ambitions since he left council, sometimes councillors leave council and come back and go, oh, maybe I should run for mayor. Do you see any of that as a possibility?
Well, look, he can come back and run in Ward 2. It's not against the law to do that. And Andrea can step down from the job she just won, the job we just awarded her. She's allowed to do it. I just don't think she should. Should Jason Farr come back to Ward 2? My ward, he is my councillor. It's like, okay, I don't want to be your councillor anymore. I'm going to go to the other side of the city and try and get a different job. Whoops, that didn't work. I'd like to come back because I in my heart of hearts, I really love you. It's like, you know what, Jason, I'm not buying it. Sorry, you didn't want to be my councillor. You know what? I agree. I don't want you to be my councillor either. So if you want to run for mayor as a consolation prize because you don't think you can win in Ward 2, or I've also heard there's rumors that he might run in 4 or 5 as a councillor, which would be unheard of, I think. I don't think it's ever happened in the history of Hamilton, but I'm not sure of that. But these people who keep doing it because there's nothing else they can do. They are unemployable. So they keep fishing around for another political job because it's all they can do.
Well, that's why we've got Robert, you on the panel, for many reasons. You know these, everybody, but you went back to farming, right? You were never in it for life. So what do you think of Jason's showing in Stony Creek? And do you think there's a possibility that these rumors might be true, that he might have either ambitions for mayor or to jump to another ward? And if so, would that be taken well, do you think, by the voters?
Well, Laura, in my time in politics are always full of rumors, okay? You never know what somebody, whether any politician, what's municipal, provincial, federal, what they're thinking, what's in the back of their mind. I have heard, once again, rumors that Councillor Farr may be looking at a shot at mayor or another ward. Of course, I didn't live in the ward I represented, but I was part of it my whole life, Ward 14, and I'm in 15. It's a little different when you're in town in Hamilton, okay? Because you're closer knit community. Yeah. You know, the job as a councillor, it's not a career. It's not your second home. You're there to represent the people for whether it be 4 years, 8 years, maximum 12 years, and get on with your life and let somebody else have a chance, fresh ideas, new ideas to bring forward. But it is never was intended to be a full-time employment, career, your second home. That should never be happening. And we know what's going on in Hamilton.
So it doesn't sound like you're terribly enthusiastic then about Jay getting in the mayor's race. But let me just ask you, because you were kind of enthusiastic about Andrea running, if Andrea drops into the race and Jay drops into the race, let's just play some sports here for a second, Robert. Who wins? Keenan, Andrea, or Jay?
I would say Andrea has the best shot, in my opinion, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
With her experience, her previous experience over time, I think she has the best shot at out of that group for mayor. And maybe, I don't know where Mayor Eisenberger is at this point, or former Mayor Bertina is, but I think Andrea would have a lead over them too.
Ameil, let me go to you. When you look at, if you want to just add to that question around the mayor's race, because I really think that's where people are very much paying attention. But can you also tell me what other races you're watching in this municipal election campaign? What's caught your eye? What do you think is where Hamiltonians are going to be really focused for the next few months?
I think, it's a strange situation that we have here where, the new candidates running have to declare by a certain date. And those who currently hold positions don't. And, they can delay, they can use their current platform, their current job to reach out to constituents. And it's really unfair. I feel like that is something that we have to structurally change, such that everyone who's going to run has to declare on the same date, has the same amount of time to run their campaign and organize, and they have to do so without using or wielding or manipulating the resources of the position of Hamilton and of City Hall. Wow. I'm very interested in a couple of races. I'm interested in what's going to happen in Ward 14. We know Coach Odante is running there and has been organizing in Ward 14 for some time. He's also someone who has called out some of the ways that our municipal political system has been negatively influenced, I'll say, by some of these systems and structures that allow for people to, manipulate the campaign. And one of those that he stated publicly is that he won't accept any money, not any money, from developers. He said if he gets checks, he's sending them back, and that's a stand I've never heard before. We know that, longstanding councillors build relationships, and some of those relationships are ones where they, create a base that's attached to the things that draw on most money. And some of that is developers. I'm also interested in Cameron's race in Ward 2. Cameron has been someone who has been very vocal, very involved in municipal politics, and someone who I know thinks about municipal politics in a way that I've never seen. Someone who studies bylaws and documents, who's looking at funding strategies and resources, always thinking about who he left out. And he's always thinking about ways that we address some of the more pressing issues, and has been called out, for it in ways that we're attacking. He gets attacked for calling things out. Yep. Well, what a better way to address the antagonism towards Cameron Kretsch than to, elect him.
Margaret, I think everybody who's on social media is riveted by those races, right? Because you've got Kojo, who is very, very active on social media, has been attacked on social media by sitting councillors, had op-eds in from the mayor about him. I mean, it is a high-profile battle in Ward 14. Terry Whitehead and everything we've been seeing from Terry lately, the videos that we're posting of Terry at council are pretty much going viral locally. And then you've got the race with Cameron Kretsch. Cameron also very engaged, huge response to his launch video that he was running. But I was talking to someone the other day who is very, very connected in Hamilton politics and not anti-progressive in any way, and does not think that Kojo or Cameron have a shot. I mean, are we drinking the Kool-Aid here that because these two progressive candidates are very bold and innovative and all the rest of it that Dr. Ameil laid out, that they have a shot against the very, very strong brands of these incumbents?
People don't like change, right? They don't like to change a lot. They might change a little bit, but they might not like to change a lot. As far as Terry Whitehead goes, and in terms of him being a powerhouse and a real challenger, this is where I think to myself how out of touch I must be sometimes. And I'm going to own it, because I didn't think Ford was going to lose as bad or win as bad as
big.
I don't say great, big as he did, right? I didn't want to believe that. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's part of it, is I didn't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that. That Kojo can't win in Ward 14, or that Terry can win again. I mean, I don't want to believe those things. And I'm trying not to be in an echo chamber of social media where all I'm hearing is what's backing up my opinion, because I don't know what's driving people who are supporting Terry Whitehead. That to me is a very strange place to inhabit. I don't know how to tell people what's wrong with you that you're supporting him, because clearly something is not right with what's going on there. Mm-hmm. So that's one piece. And I'm sorry, get back to what your earlier question was. What they can win,
right? Cameron's got a lot of buzz, but he's also had a lot of headlines, right, in the paper that may be off-putting to some.
And Cameron and Kojo both, and this is something that strikes me as very key, bring a seriousness to the role that some people don't. A lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. I would put Maureen Wilson in that category, Narinder Nan in that category, John Paul Danko to a certain extent in that category. And it goes back to Robert's comments earlier when he was talking about career politicians as opposed to people who come for the service of the job, right? And you don't want to get hung up on this service idea that people are just giving and not getting anything back. And that's why they're paid for the work that they do, right? But there is this element of counselor work, of political work that is service work. And service work is the kind of work that you devote time to, that I think Cameron does, that I think Kojo does in their off hours. I believe they live their commitment 24/7, 365. They're not the people that would come and just show up for meetings and then walk away. Right. And so I think that's the difference, that they bring the seriousness to it. And whether or not people in Hamilton are ready for that seriousness. And I don't know that they are. I don't know that they're ready for the change that will come with that seriousness.
I mean, as Robert Pasuta told us on the Oshow a while back, the councillors wouldn't even read the prep documents when delegations were being made. There's been such a low bar in terms of professionalism and activity from these councillors for so long, a sense of entitlement. That, you know, the thought of having counselors on there who are eager to professionally execute at a high level, I think sounds wonderful. But Graham, there's still brand recognition and loyalty and knowing how to get out the vote, and older demographics maybe who aren't paying attention to all this social media stuff going on. I mean, you run I Elect, you started it for a reason. Do you think you're going to be able to get out sufficient vote or sufficient information that it might actually move the needle on some of these tough races?
Well, obviously, we believe we can make a difference. Otherwise, we shut it down. But fair enough. But I take your point. I do want to take a moment, though, and just reinforce what Robert Pasuta said. He said that you shouldn't get too comfortable in the chair as councillor, not because you could get kicked out, but because you should get out. And he said 4 years, 8 years, maybe 12. Well, other than the 4 new councillors, so that's Wilson, Nan, Danko, and Pauls, all of the others have already served 12 years and more. Tom Jackson, as we know, as we say all the time, is now into his 130th year or something like that. I don't know what it is. But 25, also remember though, 25% of councils already declared they're not running. So we have 4 seats are going to change anyway, no matter what. That's good news. I don't know that we're over yet. I think that the rumors are that there could be at least another 1 or 2. Jason Farr's situation may mean he's not coming back either to Ward 2. So change is going to happen. Will it be the right kind of change? I don't know. I don't believe knocking off any incumbent, even when that incumbent has changed so dramatically, Terry Whitehead. I feel for Terry and his family, and I mean that as much as, I can say some things. If I saw that kind of behavior, that decline, that mental and physical decline, and I mean it, it's a decline. All you have to do is watch the tapes. And I was in a corporation, my first call would be to HR and say, we need to do something. We need an intervention. So aside from he's annoying and he interrupts meetings and slows stuff down, yeah, all that's true. But this guy is in deep, serious trouble. I don't know how he can sustain himself during the campaign. Having said all of that, Kojo, I know, is not taking this for granted. He's going to work as hard as he's worked at everything else he's ever done. Same with Cameron. Dr. Joseph is absolutely right. Cameron lives and breathes these values that he is bringing to the campaign, but he didn't just invent them for the campaign. They've been in evidence all the years I've known him. Every week he's doing something, and I think Dr. Joseph described very, very appropriately the kinds of stuff that Cameron does. Will that cause him to win? I don't know, Laura. He's running in my ward. He's certainly getting my vote. And the people I talk to, admittedly, maybe that's an echo chamber, don't know yet. But there is a thirst for change in Hamilton right now that every survey seems to indicate, every radio talk show, every interview, the Oshow, people you talk to, there is a desire for change. And the fact that 25% of councillors already said we're out of here says that it's going to happen anyway. The question is, might there be 8 instead of 4?
Okay, well, on that note, let me take this, and it'll be the final question to the panel. The thirst for change, Graham, to use your language. As soon as I hear thirst, I think water, I think Sewergate, ugh. And I go back to what I don't even want to tell you what my neighbor keeps calling it. He keeps bringing up that issue. So let me ask all of you, is the thirst for change being driven by issues this time, and maybe it's the same thing, scandalous behavior and a broken trust by this current council, at least the older members who were around when Sewergate came up before the last election? Is that going to be enough to get people out? And if you could just, in this final answer, tell me what you think are the driving issues. I know we already heard from Margaret, Sewergate, and I'll come back to you for a final a thought on that, Margaret. But what are the big issues that you really think are driving the vote, so that we're not in our own echo chamber, that we're really trying to think about what other people care most about. So let me start with you on this one, Dr. Ameil. What really do you think is going to get people to go to the ballot box at all? And then what do you think is going to drive their decision making and who they select, either for councillor or mayor?
I think one thing we might have learned from the provincial election is how dangerous it is to not call out the things that are really urgent and the atrocities that have occurred. So I think it's really important, and I don't think it's bad politics, to do the work of calling out bad behavior, of calling out corruption, of calling out neglect, of calling out the Red Hill Valley Parkway scandal, and calling out Sewergate, and calling out the lack of action on hate, and calling out the ways that our public health systems and leadership were failing to respond to the needs of our communities, especially the most marginalized. These are local issues that were catastrophic for many and are going to continue to be unless we address them. We've had advocates speak out time and time again around houselessness and homelessness in the city, around the opioid crisis and what we do municipally to support people, and what we could do, what we might do better. We have to call out the incumbents for their participation, their active participation in not addressing those issues. And that's not bad campaigning. I think that's good campaigning. That is asking for the kind of change that condemns walking away from doing your job and offers somebody else, offers an opportunity for change, offers some hope, offers a commitment, from all of us to something better. I think, we can learn from where that didn't happen as well in the provincial election, and where we need to dedicate our resources to challenge those systems and structures that support inherently incumbents by, investing more of ourselves in how we support these change advocates.
Well, I think the electorate's going to hold the current council to the feet to the fire over the Coots Paradise and the sewage spill. And of course, we're going to have the Red Hill. Where that's going to be, I'm not sure. Urban boundary, no doubt, is going to be a hot issue, maybe with the support that put back in Premier Ford. Maybe there won't be a chance to discuss urban boundary. Maybe it'll just happen. The LRT is going to be an issue for people who don't live on the main street, but the side streets are going to have all this traffic to do construction coming back at them on the side streets. The citizens will be concerned about that. We know housing and homelessness is a big issue in Hamilton, needs to be addressed. And infrastructure, I mean, CA mentioned Barton Street again as the bad street. Well, why does CA have to be the one that has the influence on council? Council knows that, the staff know that. So there's a lot of issues out there that are going to be a hot potato.
Do you think there'll be some negative campaigning against these new candidates, and do you think it'll be effective?
In my opinion, in municipal politics, I don't think you should do that in an election campaign. Talk about what you're going to do, what you should have done, and can changes be made. But as far as attacking, I've never believed in attacking somebody, particularly in municipal politics, to get a point across. It's they will be being unexperienced. They will make their mistakes. If they're one issue candidates, that's not the way to look at it. They got to look at their ward as a whole, the city as a whole. That's the important part in running in municipal politics.
Wow. I wish there were more like you on the council chamber, Robert. Okay, Margaret, and I'm going to let Graham have the last word on this first election show panel. Margaret, you mentioned Sewergate as being a major issue. What other issues do you think are going to animate the voter as we get into this long, hot summer of politicking?
We started this conversation looking at the provincial election and pointing out rightfully that there wasn't an option, right? that the options were lackluster, that would probably be why that Doug Ford sailed his way to such a victory. So we have to be careful that we don't do the same thing here when we're looking backwards at what all the problems were, right? We know that Sewergate was a problem. We know that the Red Hill was a problem, right? Because those are all problems that are now in the process of being fixed. LRT is in that transition stage where it was a problem when we didn't have anything there for it. But now that it's there and that development is starting to develop along the line, plans are being made, that is a chance for a vision to come up, right? So it's not just, do we want an LRT? Now it's how are we going to maximize the LRT and build on that legacy? And then the other part was homelessness and affordable housing. And the people who are slipping through the safety nets, right? The people who are falling through, they have to have a vision. They have to have something for them to believe in, that if they cast their vote, they have a voice and a chance. And I don't know that, I think there's some analysis that needs to go around the provincial election, around the demographics of who did and who didn't vote. And but I think that giving people a vision of a future change, of what that change is going to look like, that isn't so scary, that is welcoming and inclusive and accepting, is going to do more for people than focusing on all the bad stuff that's gone on. Because all the bad stuff, we all know what it is. We don't want to forget it. We want to keep it up there. But for people to go forward, there needs to be a vision for them to focus on, that they want, that they can see, that they can, that resonates with them. So that's what I would hope that candidates draw upon.
Well, it's very Obama-esque. I think he always talked about you need to have hope if you're going to have change, and you need to give it. But
well,
sorry, go ahead. One last comment.
Interesting, because I was thinking about how to reach people, right? Something that you had said earlier on Twitter about all sorts of campaigns, right? There's the mainstream media, there's social media, there's knocking on doors. There's all of these ways in which people have to be reached out to. And I don't know, well, I think the candidates who are successful are going to be the ones that master all of those, especially TikTok.
Graham, can you wrap us up here? We were doing a lot to set this big table for this critical election season coming up. Everything from the provincial impact to the mayor's race, to what races to watch, and to the issues that animate. So if you can kind of just collect it all for us, your thoughts on all or any of it, and what we may have missed, so that we're ready to watch this election carefully and have all of you back to pick up the threads as we go.
Well, Laura, I think that one of the things that I keep hearing is how annoyed people are at the scandalous behavior and decision-making made by our current council. And even though 4 of them are disappearing automatically, they've declared they're not running. It is certainly my belief that we need 2 things. All candidates, whether you're trying to get in for your second term or your first term, is people need to be held accountable for the poor decisions they've made that have held this city back. We're the 10th largest city in the country. I fear we're not the 10th best city. We should be. It would be nice if we were actually the 2nd best city, and as measured by the leadership and housing affordability and the environment and public transit and so on. I think we're 10th only because we count population. That's it. I think our candidates need to do both. They need to talk about what got us here and has held us back, and where do we want to go? What is the city you see in the future? We may not be the shining city on a hill, but at least we're a city with a hill, and why can't we? Why can't we do both and say to people, if we hadn't done this bad stuff, and these are the people who did it, we could be this good. And wouldn't we all like to go there? And as politicians have said over centuries, or at least a century, could it be any worse if you took a try on the new people? And I don't think it's that that grim, because I think the new people are actually telling us, they're also demonstrating, as Dr. Joseph said, they're showing us and have been showing us for years. So it's a good bet in some cases with known new candidates. Let's give them a chance, because God knows we've got nothing to be proud of when you look at some of the metrics. And they may want to talk about, new condo towers that nobody can afford except dentists who buy 3 of them to rent them out. And people still can't afford to move into them. That's not a good measure. Building permits is a metric. I don't think it's a good one. We have many better metrics that we can use. And the fact is, we are working our way through a bunch of scandals that are going to be very expensive to fix. And if you don't hold the people who were in charge accountable for them, then who do you hold responsible for those mistakes? They did it. They were in charge. They cast the votes. They tried to keep them secret from people. We have to hold them accountable for that. And we also have to imagine what a bright, better future is going to look like. And I hope that we're going to hear those kinds of things from people like Kojo, like Keenan, like Jeff Beattie, like Cameron Kretsch, and others who are stepping up, Craig Kassar as well. There are people there who have a bolder, brighter vision, and I want to give them a chance.
Wow, well, all of you blow me away with your various expertise and perspectives. Thank you for this first Oshow election panel. I know we covered a lot of ground, but this is a big election, definitely a change election. How big of a change is up to the voters. Thank you for all being here. Margaret Shkimba, Dr. Ameil Joseph, former Councillor Robert Pasuta, Graham Crawford. We'll have you back. And for everyone watching, if you enjoy this content, you can watch it anytime on YouTube. Tell your friends, subscribe. Let's make sure we get informed so that we get people out to the vote on October 24th. That's the mission of the Oshow, is to get people engaged and get the opinions on important issues out there. Thank you all for being the voices that people trust on the issues that they care about. Take care.
Thanks, Laura.